Okay, so Sridhar has made time to sit with me for a second conversation, and I'm really excited about this. So Sridhar, thank you for putting a time aside with me this morning.
It's a real pleasure, Jemma. As I've said to you, I really enjoyed the last conversation and great to be here again.
Thank you. So the purpose of this conversation is to learn more about mindset. I feel like it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but we want to figure out what does it really mean and how do we use it to our advantage. And this is your jam, isn't it?
It's what I do. Yeah, it's been everything to me. As a personal journey and something over a long period of time, 3 decades now. I've been working with people. It's just such a joy to see what people can do with their minds once they become more aware of it. So yeah, live it, love it, breathe it. It's a whole different life.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up on the comment you just said, when they're aware of it. So let's start there. What does that mean with relation to mindset?
Well, probably the best thing I could do is share my own story a little bit as to what that meant for me. And I do a lot of speaking, so I can't remember if I think I shared a little bit about it last time. But just as a recap, I got off to quite a rocky start in life and spiraled down. So I started to grow up with a certain situation that led to a lack of confidence, and which is all a mental thing. I know a lack of confidence is just purely the way we're seeing something. And it was the way I was seeing a situation in my family that I became an inferior one. Not that it was true or anybody else felt that way, but I felt that way. And consequently, it started to lead me down a pathway of when you're not confident, when we're not confident, then it shows in how, our performance, for example. And so I wasn't performing well. And then it just kind of snowballed to the time I was a teenager, where I was in so much pain because of the thoughts that I was feeling about myself and the world and my prospects in life, that I turned to drugs. And basically for the next 12 years, I was on a downward spiral that left me homeless and destitute, at the end of that. And I now know that was what was just over 30 years ago now. And what changed everything for me was it was a simple mindset shift. And I just call it my gift because why it happened that particular day. I had left from the southeast coast in America, where I grew up in a town called Savannah, Georgia. And I went all the way to the northwest to Seattle, Washington. And I was walking around the streets, homeless there. And I had taken a bus. My father had helped me to get out of town because I got myself into so much trouble. And as a last ditch effort, he helped me to get away. And I went to a bus station and pointed to a map and pointed to Seattle or near Seattle. And I saw the closest city and said, I'll go there. And so I went there, and it turned out to be a life-changing moment because in a moment of time, I just had an epiphany that life didn't have to be the way that I was living it. And that there was an infinite potential for it. And, where did this come? It was really deep inside that it happened. And that was a turning around moment in my life. And from there, if I look today, like so many of my dreams come true, I get to talk with amazing people like you about topics like this. I get to work with some of the most amazing people in the world, and they're, helping them achieve what they want to and be happier, and a great marriage for a long period of time. I just love my life today, and it's completely different than what it used to be. And if I look back, what shifted that was a simple thought process, but it was a deep one. It was a turnaround moment where I woke up to nobody else is responsible for where I got, because I blamed the world for everything that was going on. I blamed everything, my parents and my siblings, and the world wasn't good to me. And I blamed everybody else outside of me. And that moment that I was talking about, I realized that I was responsible. And what I've learned since that period of time, because I became voracious about this potential thing. I don't use these words anymore, just because they have stressful connotations to them, or they can. But that was the start of it. To me, it's all about living my greatest life now, just having the greatest life experience that we can. And that includes fulfilling our dreams and being content, happy, and joyful, really, more than content, like loving life within ourselves. And what changed all of that was a mindset. It was basically, it was a framework of how I saw life. And the reason I talk about awareness is because I wasn't actually aware consciously of what I was doing. I was just on that pathway without realizing that I was on that pathway. And when I had the wake up moment and then I began to learn, and all the stuff that I use and the things we're talking about here, that just came out of this, I don't know what to call it, but it was just this unrelenting commitment to my life was going to change. And that happened here. I had no clue what potential was. I had run my life into the ground, but I knew that I was going to find it. And that's what I mean by mindset and by awareness, that we have, as I've noticed, most of us aren't where we really want to be. Like if we stopped and said, if I could just have life be the way that I really wanted it, we're not there, right? Like we're not, or maybe our businesses aren't where we want them to be, or our relationships aren't where we want them to be, or our mental state of, loving life isn't where we want it to be. And it's, if we stop and think about it, well, why aren't we where we want to be? Or, I know things happen in life. I see that that's real. I guess I could call it a realist, but that doesn't mean we can't be where we want to be. And to me, it's in the mind. And what I've discovered over time, Gemma, is that we're not actually, most of us are not aware of the limiting patterns that we actually have going on. So that's why I've suggested we have to become aware of it first. That's the first step. We have to become aware, because a lot of it is unconscious. It's unconscious, it's patterning, and we don't even know it because it started back when we were, young, very, very young. We don't even know it's there.
I resonate with that hugely. I resonate with that hugely. You can hear it in yourself when you recognize it, and you can hear it in others when you recognize it. And then sometimes we're making decisions based on, things that may or may not be real, and then living with the consequence of the action that we took because of the thing that may or may not be real, when instead you reframe things for totally different outcomes with just the same amount of energy, I think is an important part as well. We have a finite amount of energy, and where we're angling it is positioning us for our results.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think a thing that is really important to note is the amount of that energy that's sucked up into those unconscious patterns, and it's why people get really frustrated with, I'm working really hard. Why aren't I getting what I want, in whatever way? It's not for lack of effort in a lot of cases, but it's that unconscious resistance. And I'm really big on pointing that out, because a lot of people just, we're not taught this sort of stuff usually. And yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And it has such an impact. Like, we can believe one thought that derails decades of our lives. I've got a really good example of that, because I work with, actually, if I back up a little bit, something I wanted to say is when you said something like, they may not be real. I would go as far as to say that if it's a limiting pattern, it's never real. And that's to say, but there's a lot of experience behind that statement. If it's limiting, it's never real. It's just a thought pattern that we're, and I mean limiting in any way. It's not real. That's one to think about, but it's something that I deal with every day and see it. Nothing limiting turns out to be real. It just turns out to be a fabrication or a perception of the mind that we're projecting onto something that limits us and doesn't need to, because we can't know it's true, and therefore it's not real. So yeah, that was a really important part of it. But I think we have to really realize, we don't have to, but it's important to realize that most of the stuff we don't know is there. The story I was going to share with you is a couple of siblings that I worked with, a brother and a sister, and they hadn't spoken to each other for, I think it was about 40 something years. So as teenagers, or like late teenagers, excuse me, they stopped talking to each other, and time had went by, and somebody told them about, some of the work that I do. And so they came because they realized, hey, we're in our 60s now. If we don't sort this out. Yeah. So they gave it a go.
Yeah.
And part of what I do with people is to say, in that situation, is to go, what actually happened at the start? Like, why did this occur in the beginning? And so I asked them, and because they came together, which was pretty amazing. You could feel the energy from them at the start. And so what actually happened? And the interesting thing was they didn't really recall off the top of their mind. They were like, oh, you know, because it had been so long that they had developed a story about one another. And finally, one of them said, oh, yeah, I remember what happened. And they talked about the incident. And so I have this process that I go with them, which is to investigate, like, what you actually created at that time in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Is it actually what really happened? All right. Or did you project something? Is it true? And one of them, I did the process with one of them while the other one was there. And in front of the other one, this person woke up to it had never happened like they thought it. Yeah, you got it?
Yeah.
And then I worked with the other one and they saw the same thing. And they just, they sat there looking at each other going, we lost 40 years of communication with their entire lives of a relationship based on something that never actually, a situation happened, but it was what they created in their minds and projected onto each other that wasn't real, that what they made it mean, it wasn't real, and that led them to lose 40 years of communication. So we had to do a little bit of extra work because the grief that came after that, the sadness, I mean, these were siblings that, you know, they realized, what did we do here? We could have had a great relationship. And so we did some work, and in that situation, there was nothing they could do other than realize, hey, you know, whatever happened in the past 40 something years, it's gone now anyway, make the most of it. And, you know, the positive thing of those types of situations is they won't lose any more time, and they'll do what they can to, you know, kind of make up for it. And they'll have a great time from here out. So I haven't caught up with them for a while, but last I heard from them, they were, you know, making up for lost time.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredibly powerful. And wow. I think you could probably apply that to many situations where you have a realization of how you're causing your own discomfort, or you're limiting yourself from where you really want to be. Once you have the tools to overcome it, you probably want to go at pace, but you're so happy that you're there as well. So then there's just this entire new way of seeing your life and of doing life. And so that's what I really want to know is, how do we get started with harnessing, you know, the way that you're using your mind, the way you're seeing your situations and reacting to difficult things? Yeah,
that's a great question. One that we really probably need about a 10-hour. we can start. Well, I think you asked just about the start of that. So that, no, we can definitely, there's some things we can do.
Yeah. How do you get started? I think,
get started. Yeah. So, as we've spoken about today so far in this conversation, the first key thing, the very, very first step of it all is awareness. And that's where this conversation has naturally gone to right from the start.
Yep.
We've got to become aware of what's actually going on in our minds. Mm-hmm. And I don't just mean that in our conscious mind that we're aware of every day. I mean those patterns. You know, why is it that when we have a great dream in life, we sabotage it? You know, we don't want to go for it, or we don't do the things that are necessary. Why don't we just go for it? And because it's the unconscious, it's the underlying thoughts and patterns that are stopping us. Generally, they involve fears in those cases, fear of failure, fear of rejection. You know, there's several different fears that we have, and those are based on thought patterns. Even those fears, like excuse me, what we were saying before, those aren't based in anything real. That's the tragedy for me, that there's no question in my mind any longer after the amount of work I've done with people. Fears aren't real. They're just based in thoughts that are based in the past, that are some perception that wasn't based on anything real, but they feel real. They're tangible, that we feel the emotions and we get stopped. So we first have to become aware of what those patterns are. And basically, for me, there's one thing that we need to understand if we're going to start to shift things. And that is that from the time that we're very, very little, and I don't think anybody knows it, so I don't think this is malicious. I think it's just a pattern that's been passed on from generation to generation to generation, and we haven't known it. is to understand that we have been brought up from the time that our brains are learning to cognize the world, what it is and how it works. We're taught that the outside world determines our inside world. So I'll give you an example of that, because as parents, we don't know we're doing this, right? For example, our child might do something, or say when we were a child, our parents we might be doing something, and our parents will say something like, "Oh, good girl," or "bad boy, bad, good boy," or we get that, right?
Yep.
Because they did something that we wanted them to do or that we were pleased with. So we learn, and if they did something that we're not pleased with, then we say, "You're naughty, you're bad." Now stop and think about that. At the time that we're forming our perception of the world, you have children, so you'll know when they come to the world, they're oblivious. They've got no idea where they are or what anything is until they start learning words. They start learning about trees, about sky, about we teach them all of those constructs, those concepts. They don't know anything. They come out, they're trying to figure out everything, right? They're eating their body, right? They're trying to figure it out, right? They've got no understanding. So then let's stop and deconstruct what they've learned at that moment of time. They have learned that if I do something, and this is again unconscious, they won't realize it. If I do something that pleases that person, I'm good. So now we're basing, or bad. So now we're basing our self-worth on the reactions of other people based on their likes or dislikes. It's basically comes down to it's personal preference. And we don't know that we're doing that. So that's a really important thing to get, because that's how we begin to construct our whole way of viewing the world. So I often say, we talk about the world. There isn't actually a world. There's only a world that we perceive. The world exists in here. That's why mindset is so important, because my whole world exists in here. But we learn that before we know that we're learning that. And the construct that I work with is we have three things. So we have something that happens, and we have a reaction to that something that happens. So that, for example, that brother and sister. So, there's something happened. Someone said something to someone else. One of them said something to the other one, and they had a strong reaction to it, a strong emotional reaction. And so they have always believed, for that 40-something year period of time, they believed that what they felt is based on what the other person did. This is the first step of awareness, is to realize that's not true. Now, this is a big thing to put across.
Yeah.
Right? It's life change. This is what changed my life. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't have this way of saying it, but this is what changed my life. There is a way that we feel, and there's a situation, but the situation didn't cause it. And the proof of that is, if you put 10 people in that same situation, they may have 10 different reactions to it. So, but look, you get what think about how many conversations are based around that in the world today, in our world today. Oh, you did this to me. You hurt me. We blame everybody for our situation. And that's disempowerment, because we can't change them.
Yep.
So what does cause it? And this is what awareness is. What does cause that disempowered situation? It's what we perceive about that situation. So as an example, this is about, I think, a lot of business people. You shared with me that this is geared towards, business owners. If you think about one of the things with business owners is a lot of business owners or sales, people on the sales side of things don't want to make their calls, or don't want to, it's a notorious thing in business, is just making your calls, or, putting yourself out there and sharing your service or your products with people. And why don't we do that? Obviously, if we started a business, we're usually very passionate about what we do. Why are we hesitant to go out and tell people about it? Well, primarily it's the fear of rejection, right? And because we don't want to be told no, and we think that they're rejecting us. And so think about what happens in that case. So we have a situation, which is we're talking to a person, we're contemplating talking to a person about what we have to offer. So we have, so a lot of times when people go there, will feel fear, for example. And, I do a kind of a skit about, picking up the phone and then hanging it back up and going and making a coffee and, oh, I'm just going to pop to the shop and, just a little bit peckish, or, oh, if I clean up all my desk and, and then we don't ever make the call, right? And we're sitting there in that fear that is about, we don't want to get rejected, or, we don't want to get judged, or we don't want to get, it's these different fears that are out there. But if we do make a call and someone says no, is that actually rejection? Are they saying no to us, or are they saying no to a perception of what they see that you're offering? Do you get the difference of that? How removed that is from us?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just say for all business people now, here's one for you. To stop selling is what I would say. Like, just stop selling and start offering. And don't worry about if you know what you have to offer, just offer it and keep offering it. And know that if they say yes or no, they're not saying yes or no to you. They're saying yes or no to what they perceive about a situation. That's not you. That's not you. And so this is how powerful that construct can be, because once we realize it's within me, it's within everything that I'm perceiving is within me. Therefore, the great thing about that, Gemma, is it can be changed if that's the case.
Yes.
If a situation is causing my issue, I've got no power over it. That's why people feel victimized a lot of the time, because they've got no power. They feel no power. But what they don't know is it's their thought, it's their perception that's creating the situation. And that we can change. That that's where you can apply tools and change it. And the thing that I say is, it's on what level are we changing it? I think that's something that's really important about mindset. A lot of times in my industry, a lot of the stuff that I did and a lot of stuff that we have is changing it on just a conscious level. That's been my experience. So but the deeper pattern is still there. So I say to people, if you actually want to change your results significantly, you've got to change them on that deeper unconscious way. You've got to really get into the patterns. What patterns did I develop as a child in relationship to my parents or my teachers or my siblings or whatever it might be? What are those patterns that I'm still carrying, that trigger on a very regular basis? Because why do we fear rejection? Like, what? Stop and think about it. Like, why do we fear a word? Why do we fear the word no? Because of what was said to us as a kid. Yes. No was not just no, it was no, you're a naughty person. Yeah. No, you always ask me for things. And, like as a child and you're a parent, I remember from speaking last time you saying that. And, that when a child wants something, and as parents, we have 1,000 things going on, and we're in a shop and they want something, to them, it's like their whole world to want that candy bar, right? And we're thinking, hey, you've had too much sugar today, and no, you can't have that. They're like, no, their whole world is over because they can't have that. That's what they think. But what we don't realize is on some level, we're actually taking that on in the unconscious mind. And those are the patterns that later in life, that's why we react so uncomfortably to a no. Even though we have an adult version of that, we don't, hopefully, sometimes as an adult, we can throw a tantrum, probably not in a shop, but we throw tantrums in different ways, right? But we have ways of overcoming that, but inside we still feel that fear. In reality, someone saying no to whatever is just a moment of time that they said no to a perception of the offer that they got. But that's not just with offers and sales. Somehow it's gone there, I think, because of your audience. But it's in everything. It's in everything, and we have patterns. So, for example, another one would be in our relationships. Like when relationships are the place that for most of us, we're the most vulnerable because our partners know us through and through. Their perceived rejection hurts more than others because, they're the one that loves us and, is with us. And so, but if you think about the games that are played in relationships, and sometimes we don't know that that's going on, like the withdrawing, for example, like we won't really put ourselves out there, or before we say we love someone, we'll check to see, am I going to get it back? If I, it's that type of thing. What we don't realize is that that's all, patterning. If we said, I love you to someone and they didn't say it back, is it actually the end of the world?
Mm.
If we stop and think about it, is that the end of the world?
Mm.
It isn't.
No.
But we feel like it is, and that's the patterning that I'm suggesting people want to get aware of. So the word that we're talking about here is a bit deeper. Like with mindset, for me, there's really two forms of mindset, and it is getting talked about more and more. But there's a real conscious form of mindset, and there's an unconscious form of mindset. There's a great story about that if you want me to. A great public story that everyone can see that I feel is, I was really. It was Richie McCaw's movie, I think to many people, the greatest rugby player maybe ever in the world. And, very, very interesting guy. And he did a movie, which was through the shot film through the last year of his career called Chasing Grey. And when I was traveling, which I was telling about earlier, that movie was on the plane, and I decided to watch it again. And it really brought back that there was one part in there after the All Blacks lost, probably timely for this conversation, after they lost the 2007 World Cup, and it was such a shock, at the quarterfinals, and then it was tracking that journey from, actually they had lost, Richie was part of 203 and 2003 and 2007. And he talked about that journey. And, between the 2007 and the 2011, he really talked about the impact of mind state, about doing work on the mental side of things, and going to those dark places within. And I think if we listen carefully to it, like they didn't, they were taking him to his deep mind, right? They weren't just dealing with I can do it, which is helpful, but it's helpful on a surface level. They were really going into it and saying, go to those places, meet those places, and then what, and then, then turn it around from that perspective. So when I look at 2011, and I'm a rugby fan, so I followed that analogy. But look, whether you're a rugby fan or not, or a sport fan or not, following what happened there from the All Blacks from 2003 to 2015, if I was just didn't care about rugby and I was a business owner, I'd be studying what they did, because that you can learn lessons. We can learn lessons from that. But I am a rugby fan, and just to see what happened, I mean, whether people know it or not, Richie had broken bones in his foot, playing in the semi-final final. It's a very interesting story as to how they got through, but that's just pure mind. I mean, how do you get through that other than develop a mindset? And we can't develop that mindset just on the surface. We really got to be deeply aware of going on. So we need to face, but I also say to people that when you do go and face those times, they aren't what you think they are. Like, I know things happen. Like, in 30 years of doing this work, there's not much I haven't seen. You could probably imagine some of the things that people bring in terms of what's happened to them in life, or things that they've experienced, or places that they've gone to. And it's there isn't much that I've seen a lot in that. But when they go back, and because those things that happen, and I do get that things happen, but a question that I ask people is, how long ago did it happen, right? Sometimes this thing happened 20, 30, 35 years ago. And I'm like, but you're still living as if it was today, and it's not. And the other thing is, what if what you took out of that is what's actually causing your problem? Because if it hasn't happened, whatever it was, if it hasn't happened in that period of time, then it's what you're thinking about it that's impacting you, not what happened. Because is that making sense? Or is it,
yes. No. Yes, that's, very much so. Yes.
It's working out. It's going there. And what they find out is it's all of the projections they put onto what happened. That's what's causing the problems. And so that's that's the real answer to what we need to be aware of. Because if we can become aware of it on that level, and actually, because what we project onto these situations isn't real, we can be totally free from them. That's how I went from homeless to having, continuing to I've got my challenges, but so many of my dreams come true, and I know from what I do now that we can have anything that we want. We can create anything that we want. There's certain steps that we need to take, but the biggest sabotage is the lack of awareness of the unconscious patterning that we've got. The way people can see it is when you don't do that thing that you want to do, or when you freeze instead of just be present. I talk to people sometimes about public speaking, and I do it as part of my life, but we're afraid of public speaking. But why? If we think about going on a stage and talking to people, what are we afraid of? Like, those people, they came to see us, right? They're for us, they're with us, but we see them unconsciously as the enemy that's going to judge, or we don't know we're seeing them as an enemy, but we're seeing them as the people that are going to judge us, but they're not. And so where do these things come from? They're unconscious patterns, but they're not real. They're not real. And becoming aware of them, and becoming aware in certain ways that they're not real, that's where awareness starts. So that was the true answer. I think you want the true answers, Jemma.
Well, I think all the things all the moments before this to get to that answer helps us all realize that answer as you're saying it as well. So I think it's the perfect summary. I think the biggest thing that it sounds like people need to take away from this recording is, in order to make change, you need to be aware of what's happening. But in order to be aware of what's happening, you're going to have to want to see those things. And that's one of the most difficult things about personal growth, is finding your imperfections. And that can be a really scary thing, I think. But you have to stare it in the face in order to recover and do what you got to do next.
Yeah. 100%. The only thing I would add to that is there are no imperfections. As far as I can say, they're not imperfections. They're just the way things are.
Yep. I
sometimes say, when people say, I failed, this is a big story. So I'll say to them, some people have real failures. So I've made these big mistakes in life, right? And I get it. Like, I feel, for a while, I felt the same way about it, because I did some pretty rotten things when, pretty rotten things when I was addicted, and that, like, that. It's not an uplifting lifestyle. I did some things that I wasn't proud of at the time, and I just now I know they're things that happen on the journey. I don't even see them as mistakes. They're exactly what needed to happen at the time. I don't want to go back I don't want to do them more. They weren't they're not the way I choose to live my life. But there aren't actually. We haven't done anything imperfect. So when these people they say they have these failures, and I'll say, okay, well, get out a piece of paper, because some of them are really judging themselves, like, significantly. And I'll say, I'll get them to define failure, and that's probably another time for a different conversation here. But I've investigated that word a lot, like, for decades, and I can't find an actual meaning for it, because the most common definition people give me for failure is not achieving something I set out to do. Fair enough. So what I get them to do is, and I'll have a little joke with them, and I'll say, if you got a piece of paper, but make it a notebook, because you're going to need a lot of pieces of paper for this, right? And they'll go, yeah, I've got a notebook. And I'll say, start writing down the names of people that that have never done that. And not one person in all the years I've done that has written one name on a piece of paper. We're human beings, right? Like, even viewing things as imperfection. I get, like, they're just part of life. And, some people say to me, well, that's an excuse to do things. And I'm like, no, because when you've done something that you're not happy with, you've done something that's less than your true self. It doesn't make it a mistake, or it doesn't make it an imperfection. It makes you human, but you probably want to do something about getting a better result in the future. But there's two ways to do that. There's judging ourselves for it, putting ourselves down. I mean, the failure story is one of the biggest ones that I see. Like, that's what people that hampers people. They feel like they failed, and it stops them from getting on the horse again. And, they lack confidence because they fear they're going to do it again. But all that happened at the end of the day was they had an expectation that didn't get met. That was it. Move on.
Mm.
Move on, create another one. Why would you not set another thing that you want and try again? And who cares how many times you don't do it? If we look at life, sometimes we have an expectation and it gets met, or we have a desire and it gets met, and sometimes we have a desire and it doesn't get met. So excuse me, I didn't mean to be like I come back at you. Like, these are just important things to me, because context is the most important thing I can say to anyone. Context of where we're coming from changes everything. And most of us are coming from this context of I'm bad, I'm wrong, I failed. None of it's true. You've just had, sometimes things have worked out and sometimes they haven't. Welcome to life. That's how it works. And you haven't failed. It means nothing about you. Do the next thing that you want to do and do it 100%. Then watch what happens to your life. So it's not imperfection. It's the journey of life. And we just get up and do it. And the thing is, I've learned in my industry, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. No, there's no bootstraps to pick yourself up with. You just didn't get an expectation about it. Stop and think about how significant the difference of that is. Because if we have to pick ourselves up by our bootstraps, and this is what we love to do, right? Because we love the drama. The ego mind, as I call it, loves the drama. I picked myself up by my bootstraps. We love all of that stuff. Well, you can do that if you want, or you can just get up and realize, I didn't get my desire that time. What's next? And my experience of that journey is so much easier. It's so much less resistant and more productive. So sorry if I jump on these things, but this is what, when I started out doing the work in my industry, and I can only speak for myself, there's a lot of stuff out there that sounds really good, but it's misleading. It's not. So I do point that out, Jemma. I should have probably forewarned you about. At the end of the day, look, after what I went through in life, I just don't. I don't have any time to waste, and I don't think other people do either. And I spent so much time in feeling good, sounding good, but no change. And I just that to me, it's a tragedy when people do start looking for something and they put themselves into it earnestly and don't get there. And unfortunately, look, there's some really, really great stuff in my industry, and I'm so thankful to some of the teachers I've had, but there's also a lot of, be wary of the pathway. I say to people when you start down the road of personal development, because there's a lot of stuff that feels good, but doesn't take you anywhere. And yet the best you get is another little shot of feel good and another little shot of feel good. But, it's like you say, if we really want to get somewhere, we got to look at what's real, and we got to deal with the things that are stopping us. But we find that when we're willing to do that, they weren't what we thought they were, and it becomes a lot easier than we had thought. So yeah, that's what I mean by we don't want to start from a place of self-judgment in any way, shape, or form. We are absolutely perfect as we are. It doesn't mean I know when I've acted in a way, say I've been rude to someone. I know that, right? It's a human thing, but it doesn't mean I don't want to go to that person and apologize for what I've said, because it wasn't my true self. Yeah. So people sometimes come to me and say, well, what you're saying, Sridhar, just gives people an excuse to do anything they want. And I go, well, you'll know if you feel it inside when you're not being real to who you are, right? And that doesn't feel good. So that's your guide. That's your real guide as to, I need to make up for what I've just done, and I don't like behaving that way. Or if we make this simple, what people can do, if they want to, why is mindset important? Because where your mind is where you will go. If your mind isn't more on what you can't do than you'll go to what you can't. If your mind is more focused on what you can do, then you will achieve more. And our minds are the central most important thing that we do all the stuff out here, all the tasks, but we don't look after the thing that will propel us the most or resist the most. So if we want to make use of that, what this is all about, turning our awareness from out here to in here. And the way that I do it, and the way that I work with people to do it, is to, first and foremost, there is a very key way to know where your mind state is at any time. And that's, how do you feel? So if we start training ourselves to how we feel, am I feeling fearful? Am I feeling great? Am I feeling, and I'm not talking about the surface great. I'm not talking about I'm feeling great. No, I mean, go within, what are you really feeling like, right? Are you feeling fearful? And it's about acknowledging it. And you're right. Not everybody wants to do that, and but it's a life changer when we become willing to, and when we find there isn't anything to really fear. So, am I feeling angry with this person? Am I feeling so? We know the moment that we're off. We know the moment that we're off center, that we're off what I call our true self.
Yep.
True self doesn't have any problems. It's just a name I've given things, but it doesn't. It's just aligned, fully aligned with what it wants to do. A lot of times people say in the zone. You know that term, in the zone. A lot of athletes use that term. And when we're in the zone, we're in the zone. If not, it's about being aware of what do I feel. And we might say, for example, and it takes a little bit of practice, but I feel angry with that person, or I feel fearful. Well, what we're talking about today, and it is something to meditate on, is we've always thought that if I feel angry, then I'm just justified in that anger because that person did something. But whatever they did, they're not even affected. I'm the one sitting here angry, right? Like it's ruining my day, not theirs. And so I don't want that. I don't want anybody to have that power over me. I don't want anything or anybody to have power over me to make me angry, I want to love my life. I mean, I want to enjoy it. And so what we do, a simple technique, is to just start to become more aware of what am I feeling, and to realize that if we're feeling anything other than empowered or aligned or going for it, it's not a situation that's causing that. It's a thought about that situation that's causing that. And it's finding that thought. So if I'm angry with someone, I'll give an example. If we're still okay on time, we got a couple minutes.
Yep.
If, say, we're angry with our partner. Okay. And I think it's probably something everyone's done if they have a partner for any length of time. And we go, okay, I'm really angry with it because I was trying to talk to them about something and they walk off or something like that. And so we're justified in that anger. We'll let them know it in so many different ways, right? We'll withdraw, or we'll tell them, you don't listen to me anyway, whatever it is. Right? Okay. So we're there feeling angry, possibly other things as well, but we'll say anger is one of the stronger ones. And we go, okay, what happened there? Well, what happened was I tried to talk to my partner and they went, yeah, what? And they walked away. And if I look at the thought might be, they didn't listen to me. Right. And if you think about how many times we've had that thought about them in the past, they will all add up and be present in that one moment. This is where I've said to people, to understand this work, your partner's probably, if you're in a relationship or have been, it's probably the best place to see this in action, because everybody gets this one. Have you ever reacted disproportionately to something that your partner did? Like, in other words, they did something on this level and our reaction was on that level. And everybody can say yes to that. I've been married for over 20 years, so we can all say yes to that. So how and why? It's because all of those moments of that belief are present in that moment, and we're unleashing that entire perception on our partner. So we've created a story about them that they don't listen to us. But if we actually deconstruct or really take an honest look, we'll find out that something else is actually going on. I mean, they chose us out of everybody in the world. It's not that they're simply not listening to us. Something else is going on. Perhaps they're not feeling listened to, or perhaps, something else is going on in their life, but we make it all about this one thing. And that's what I mean by becoming aware of that, because think of that dynamic in a relationship. Where does that lead? If two people start believing that you're not listening to me, that's the relationship gone, isn't it? Like, you might live together, you might be together, but we're talking about an actual relationship because we start protecting ourselves, we start closing ourselves off, and we don't, we stop being communicative with that person. And oftentimes we don't realize it, but these are just perceptions. So this is what I mean by becoming aware. If we become aware, and the emotion, like a lot of times people try to get the actual thought, but the thought is so ingrained, it's so habitual, it's hard to go straight to that often. We can always tell how we feel. It's easy to stop at any given point. So what I say to people, if they want to start, if they want to start, and it's powerful, Gemma. I mean, it will change their entire lives. Like it's when we take responsibility for what we think and feel, no one can ever stop us again. Think about that. No one has the power to stop us again. But if we continue to react and live in these patterns, then everyone can stop us, because all they have to do is say something that triggers that response, and we're off on that, right, on that journey. So it's becoming aware. I'm feeling angry, and then just realizing, even asking the question, what am I thinking? What am I projecting onto this that's doing that? That's a starting point. There's more to it, but I feel like I've said probably enough for a day, but that's the starting point. I think if people just start to become aware, start to realize that our emotions, our feeling states being, and again, I know there's a lot of people that get kind of angry at this, going, but hey, you don't know what happened to me. I go, I get that. I'm not saying something didn't happen. I'm saying it doesn't need to run the rest of your life. That's what I'm saying. If something happened to you and you might have been powerless over it at that particular time, it doesn't have to run the rest of your life. That's my messaging. It's not, and part of it is holding on to all of those things that we held on to, from that moment of time. And it's letting that go. It's realizing, and again, what causes these things is not what happened. It's what we project onto what happens. And I think right now in our world, there's so much of this going on. We've had a real tumultuous time for 2 or 3 years now that's brought up so many different things for so many different people in so many different ways. And I think this is a really important message at this moment, because if we realize, look, I had a lot of work to do on it, because there was a lot of stuff going on, and it was pretty crazy. I mean, whatever angle you look at it, it was pretty wild. I'll put it that way. And I had some reactions, and I had to look at them. And what I know is, hey, things are going on, but my life could be terrible during that time, or my life could be great during that time. And it's up to me to determine, to understand what am I feeling and projecting onto the situation. When I remove that, I'm free to just focus on what I want to bring about. And maybe while I am saying this with this is saying, there isn't anything in life that can happen that can stop us from who we are and what we want to achieve, but it's what we're projecting onto it that stops that. So it doesn't matter what's happening in the world. We can do what we want to do. It's just, if we stay clear and we don't get caught up in the negativity and the fear, like I often say, people just unplug from anything that's fear inducing, all that constant negative messaging, just unplug from it all and focus on what you want to do going forward. No one can stop us once we get that. So again, I know this is some complex stuff, but simply starts with self-awareness, starting to understand when we get off track, the moment that we go from feeling good to feeling not good, what happened in that moment, and what was the situation, what did we project? So that's the first step. And then, if they want to if people want to go to another step, it would be just going, well, what else could it be here that could start to help me to get out of that way of looking at it.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. It's because we can use this, we can listen to what you've just shared, and we can actually now use it. That's what I appreciate so much. Maybe it doesn't give us all the answers, but it gives us something to think about, and then we can seek out that further support and knowledge through people like yourself to take the inspiration that we feel from having listened to you to make that change. So this doesn't have to give us all the answers, but it certainly has to give us an idea of what's possible. And I'm taking away that it is entirely possible, and that's the most empowering thing from what you've just shared. Is it's within us to live the life that we want to live, and it's within us to get those roadblocks out of the way because we've put them there in the first place.
And let me say this too, because I appreciate your reflections. And the reason that I have this conversation is because I could give you all the answers, and I could give everybody all the answers in the world, but until they become aware, they won't make any difference. Awareness is the first step.
Yeah.
And people say, "Oh, give me all the answers." I go, "I've done that in the past, and nobody did anything with it because they weren't even aware of the problem."
Yeah.
So once you get on it, but I guess if you don't mind a little plug here, because I am really excited. Do you mind if I do?
Yes,
But
please.
there is a place now where the answers can be, and I know. Thank you for putting it out there last time. But do you mind if I mention the community?
Please do. Absolutely, please do.
Look, because I mean, if people are interested in finding out more, so I've got all these techniques that I use. We package them up, we put them into recorded courses, and this is the first time. So in 30 years of doing this work, we're launching on the 18th of next month of October. So it's like literally hot off the press. We've been working on this for over 2 years. Basically, what happened is, look, I work with amazing people, but fortunately, people have got value out of what I've done, and they've passed on the work. And I just got to where I couldn't serve any more people, and I thought, well, that doesn't work for me. And how can we do it? So I've got this great group of people that have got together, and we packaged this up into templates and recorded courses that people can go through step by step and find the clarity. We put all this stuff into practice in this course, and I'm going to do like a live session every week where I'll actually take someone through the processes, for example, so people can watch it and learn about it. And it is very, very, very accessible. I don't know if I can talk about it a little bit.
Please do. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Because my one-to-one fees now, because they've gone up, and I've done this for a long period of time, so they're not accessible to everyone. But we're talking $500 a year for a whole year of applying this type of work and actually transforming your life. So we put that community together, and it is launching on the 18th of October. So I just wanted to make something that everybody, as I look out in the world, I'm like, there's a lot of suffering people at the moment with, maybe not every day, but we're hearing a lot more people worried about stuff and, this type of thing. And it's social media is ramping up with its negativity. Media is ramping up with its negativity. So I wanted to create something that people could come to if they wanted to, to start mastering some of these principles and live the life that they want. So I will say that if they want to, because look, it is, I have to be responsible here because it is a bit of a step-by-step process too. I think today, I sort of wondered, I have to wonder with this conversation, do I take it too far sometimes? And
no.
Because it can be shocking to wake up to some of these things, right? But but at the same time, if we don't, we're stuck.
And I think you need to have a strong reaction in order to trigger that change as well. If someone's listened to this recording, then they're in the mood for change. And so I don't think there's anything that's too much or too far, because we want that jolt. We want to be picked up and go, get it sorted. So I don't believe you said, you said exactly what you needed to.
Okay, good. Yeah. Thanks for the feedback there. So well, look, I'll give people contacts, or I think you'll put them on there for me, but should I say my website? If they're interested, they can join the community through our website. And it's just expand-consulting.com. And so people want to look at, I wanted to make it like, you got nothing to lose and everything to gain. So give it a try. If it's not for you, then that's what you've done. But if it is for you, my clients have told me over a long period of time that their lives have like everything has changed for them. So that's why we wanted to put that community together. So that's where we're going to go into step by step. There's a number of different techniques that I use here to help people to apply this to get the results. But I hope it's left people thinking and turning the mirror from the outside around to the inside, because that's where, if they don't ever connect with anything I do, if they just take that one step, that will start to change their lives anyway.
Thank you. You've been so generous with your time and with your insights. Thank you. I always take away so much from you. So thank you again. And I know that this is just going to bring so much value to our listeners. Thank you.
Thanks, Jemma. Thanks for having me. It's really been great to have another conversation with you.